And now there's one other part of identity crisis which I need to talk about. But first, I want to take an aside to recall an article which I read in an issue of Wizard magazine that was printed, I guess, right around the time that the identity crisis started rolling out and hitting the comic book stores. And there was an article in Wizard in which some guy named Jeff Johns was being interviewed. And this Johns guy talked about how he was going to bring Hal Jordan back as Green Lantern, and the story was going to be called Green Lantern Rebirth. I remember reading this article and thinking, is this like a pre-April Fool's Day joke? They're really bringing Hal Jordan back as Green Lantern? And for those of you guys who haven't ever read an issue of Wizard magazine or don't remember Wizard from back its earlier days, there were some very witty, very wry, sarcastic, sardonic articles written in that magazine. A lot of in-jokes were put into different articles that, the article would start off, you'd think it was pretty serious, and then they'd make an off-the-cuff remark. They did that even in the fine print in some of their contests and in their special orders back in the day. But it turns out that this story was legitimate. And, I mean, really what it came down to in bringing Hal back as Green Lantern was money. And just as in 1994, in 2003, 2004, the Green Lantern franchise was struggling yet again. I think it really had to do with Judd Winnick departing the Kyle Rayner volume of Green Lantern. And I felt that Green Lantern started going downhill with Ben Raab as a writer. Certain story elements were introduced and weren't followed up on. There were certain character developments which made readers feel uneasy. Certain characters, the way they were acting, it didn't seem like they should act this way. And so sales on Kyle Rayner's book were not good. And so this being the midway point in the pre-Flashpoint era, everything old was new again at DC. So clearly the mindset of the Brain Trust had shifted, and there was a willingness to bring Hal Jordan back as Green Lantern. So now it was time to start setting things up for Hal's return to Green Lantern, which meant that he would, in time, be separated from the Spectre force. And the first implication that Hal was nearing the end of his run as the Spectre came in the penultimate issue of Identity Crisis. And by this point, things were really hitting the fan. Of course, Sue Dibney had been murdered. It was revealed that she had been raped by Dr. Light many years ago. A firestorm died in a battle which seemed tacked on to the general murder mystery. Jack Drake and Captain Boomerang, one had killed each other. Jack Drake in defense. Captain Boomerang had been given an order from a mysterious unnamed source to take out a hit on Mr. Drake. And so Oliver Queen takes it upon himself to go to a park bench and call out the Spectre. And the Spectre appears in the night sky, talking very spectre-y, saying, why do you call upon me, mortal? I have more important things to attend to. And Ollie just waves it off and says, come on, Hal, cut the crap. I want to speak with you. So the Spectre morphs into Hal, and they have a heart-to-heart about this ongoing crisis. And Hal explains to Ollie that this really is a mortal affair. as a Spectre, Hal may know who's behind the doll, but he is not allowed to intervene. It's up to the heroes on the mortal plane to solve the mystery. And Ollie accepts that, but before they depart each other's presence, Ollie looks at Hal and says, okay, Hal, one more thing. When are you coming back? Like, really coming back? Not like this as a Spectre, but when are you coming back as you? And Hal grins and says, I'm working on it. And that leads into a 3-part storyline in JSA, running through issues 60 through 62, titled Redemption Lost, in which the Spectre crashes to Earth and is tended to by the JSA. And when the Spectre tries to lift himself up off the ground, we don't see the Spectre. We actually see a very sickly looking, emaciated Hal under the Spectre's hooded cloak. And in a sign of how sick the Spectre looks, the green is a very muted color. And Hal is rambling about how he's losing control because he's been so focused on redemption. The Spectre's cries for vengeance are becoming so great, and Hal he can't handle it. And a consequence of this is that a whole lot of souls that had been condemned by the Spectre over the decades are now becoming loose and running rampant upon the city of Portsmouth. And there's some great flashback art by Tom Mandrake on a couple of these issues. He does 2 or 3 pages in, I want to say, issues 61 and 62, where they look like they're unused pages from his run on the Spectre with John Ostrander, and they just harken back to that wonderful work that Messrs. Ostrander and Mandrake did. And it's really nice to see Father Kramer make an appearance here in the story arc, as he comes in to counsel Hal Jordan this time. And he's trying to help Hal find a balance between redemption and vengeance. And to make things more complicated, the Spirit King is released and once again takes over Jay Garrick's body and attempts to kill the second Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, who you'll recall was inspired to become Mr. Terrific after having a talk on a bridge with Jim Corrigan. Well, unfortunately, in the end, Hal decides that he can't be a spirit of redemption anymore. He apologizes and he gives in to the Spectre's cries for vengeance, and he takes all of those condemned souls and he swallows them up again. And Jay Garrick is freed of the Spirit King, but Jay is full of guilt and remorse for once again being used as a vessel to try to kill one of his colleagues. And the heroes look on as the Spectre again morphs into a sickly, emaciated looking Hal Jordan, this time with blood running down both sides of his face, and he's clutching at his stomach, and he just disappears. And the heroes know that this is not going to be good at all. And in the epilogue, Jay Garrick and Green Lantern Alan Scott are talking, and Alan uses his ring to flash a green bat signal, and Batman comes and he speaks with Jay and Alan, and he assures them that if the JSA can't stop Jordan, the JLA will. And this is the lead-in to Green Lantern Rebirth, and it just speaks to the influence of Wizard Magazine at that time, that the prologue to Green Lantern Rebirth was printed exclusively in an issue of Wizard magazine, which angered a lot of readers who said, well, I don't read this magazine regularly. Why do I have to pay $5 to $7 for an issue to read a prologue which should be printed in issue number 1? It also angered a lot of fans who said, okay, well, it's been printed in the trade now, but I bought the series in monthly format. I don't want to have to double dip, but now I'm being forced to if I want to have the complete story. And it's a good prologue too. In the prologue, we see Kyle Rayner at the farthest reaches of space. He's on an alien planet, and he helps a populace from the clutches of a threatening beast. And after vanquishing the threat, some of the populace approach Kyle and they tell him Parallax is coming. Parallax is coming. And Kyle says, what? And then the scene switches to Earth, and Hal Jordan is taking an air show. And there's this little boy standing beside him who reminds us of a young Hal Jordan watching his dad flying airplanes for Ferris Aircraft. And the boy says to Hal, see, mister, that's my dad up in the plane. And it brings back childhood memories for Hal. And history appears to repeat itself as the pilot loses control of his plane due to a malfunction. And much to the Spectre force's protest, Hal morphs into the Spectre, grows giant size, plucks the plane out of the air, sets it down on the ground so a little boy won't lose his father. The Spectre starts to chastise Hal, saying, you're wasting my power on such trivial things. And the Spectre compels Hal to go with him across the world. And they're outside the house of a very deviant person. And the Spectre expresses its desire for vengeance. There's a need to punish the individual, the inhabitant of this house. And Hal has enough of it. And a piece of the Spectre's ectoplasm morphs into Hal's upper body. And he's wearing the classic Green Lantern uniform. And he says to the Spectre, that's it. I've had enough of your sick cries for vengeance. I want out. Well, Spectre and Hal can't continue their tete-a-tete because there's a sinister laughing going on, which stops them. And it turns out it's Parallax. And Parallax seems to consume both Hal and the Spectre. And Parallax walks off. And this leads into Green Lantern Rebirth number 1. And in the first issue, Kyle Rayner crash lands on Earth, and he's carrying a large item with him, and he needs to make his way to the JLA watchtower. Meanwhile, Hal is trying to take in a local baseball game, and he meets up with his old fellow corpsmen, John Stewart and Guy Gardner, and Hal can't get any respite here as the game, as people just feel compelled to come up to him and reveal their deepest, darkest confessions to him. Acts of infidelity, petty crimes, acts of fraud. Guy finds himself admitting that he's been cheating on his taxes for years. And Hal just has to excuse himself and fly off. And following that, Guy's Voldarian powers go out of control, and his body appears to be eating itself away. So John has to get Guy to the watchtower, where Dr. Midnight reveals that Guy's human DNA is attempting to overwrite his Voldarian DNA. The scene shifts to Oliver Queen's mansion, where Oliver and Mia Dearden are suiting up as Green Arrow and Speedy, respectively, and they hear a crash coming from the basement. And when they go down, they see longtime Green Lantern arch nemesis Black Hand trying to steal a dormant Green Lantern ring that